You're listening to She's the Business podcast. Have you ever listened to podcast episodes where there's an interview with a guest and thought, wow, I'd just love to do that. I'd love to have an interview on a podcast and, really share some of my value, my insights, my lessons, my learnings with that audience, something that you'd love to do, but you're just not sure how to do it. How do you go about becoming a guest on a podcast? Does it feel like it's just a barrier that's too big to cross right now? It doesn't have to be. And today's episode, I'm sharing with you exactly how you can go out and get yourself guest spots on podcasts. Super easy, super simple. No, you don't need a professional. No, you don't need anything except yourself, a computer to do your research, obviously, and an email that you can send an email out. So stay tuned, because today you will learn how to get a yes from a podcast host in coming on their podcast and being a guest and doing an episode together. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration. Good morning. Okay, today's episode is all about how to get selected as a guest on podcasts. And let's start off with, well, why would you want to do that in the first place? And this is a really good question. So podcast is content that sticks around. I like a million miles more time, much longer than any other kind of content you could be doing, maybe with the exception of YouTube. But a podcast content, it doesn't get lost in the feed. It doesn't disappear after a few days or months or weeks. It's there for years. So it's really, really valuable content to have online where people are searching and they can find podcast episodes. Yes, on search engines, on Google, wherever. Google has its own podcasting app, podcasting area. So all podcast content is searchable content, which means that if you get a guest spot on somebody's podcast, you don't even need to have your own podcast. Literally just getting a guest spot on someone else's podcast, doing an episode with them and having some content, some value to share. This is a potential source of leads for you, for your business, that has taken you a very short amount of time to put into, but is going to keep on working for you and generating exposure and leads for years to come in the future, for probably much longer than you ever anticipate. So yes, highly valuable thing to do is to appear on other people's podcasts, even if you don't have your own one, to just appear on podcasts. So let's talk about getting those guest spots on the podcast. The reason why I'm doing this episode today is because I've had this podcast for not quite a year yet, but we're coming up towards the year. We're also coming closer to my 100th episode. And in this time, I've received many, many guest suggestions. So people pitching to come on my podcast as a guest. And as a host, most of these pitches, if I'm going to say 99% of them, are lacking serious strategy in how to actually get a yes, how to get an instant yes from me. And most of them I go back to with questions and they don't even respond. So let's talk about, what are these pitches that people are sending me? What are they missing? Why are they not an instant yes? Because a lot of these people are fantastic. They're highly successful. They've got some great things that they're offering. They're amazing, but their pitch is not getting an instant yes from me. And there's one main reason why not. It's simply because the person sending in the pitch, sometimes it's themselves, often it's actually a podcast booking agency. And so here's something to look out for. If you are going to use an agency, I would want to review and assess what those emails that they're going to send on your behalf actually look like. they often sending me just an email and a one sheet, which is like a one pager about the person. And it's all about them. It's just how wonderful they are, what qualifications they have, where they've spoken before. There is nothing that's talking to me about why I would like to have this person on my podcast. What is the relevance to my audience? What value are they going to bring? And more importantly, how are they going to collaborate with me in this opportunity? Because this is a collaboration of both of our times in doing an interview, and for me to use my platform to share their story and put that out there, it's actually not about them. It's about my podcast having great content. It's about my audience. And importantly, how are they going to support this? So it's really simple. What could you do to support an episode that you guest on? Well, if you have an email list, you could send an email out to your email list, sharing that you've been on an episode, sharing that content with them. If you have a social media audience, you can share that podcast episode to your social media audience. You can promote it. You can help your audience to come and hear you on the podcast. And that is honestly, it's that simple. That's how you show the podcast host that you value their time, that you value their platform, and that you value this collaboration of them putting in their time to enable you coming on the platform to do an interview, by showing them how you will put in something of your own, by supporting the podcast in that way, by sharing it with your audience, by even doing something as simple as promoting it and sharing it more broadly than what you're expecting the podcast host to do for you. So as you can see from just what I've been talking about, that what is happening at the moment in all of these pitches that are coming into the inbox is the person sending them is asking for a freebie. They're asking, hey, how about you put this person on your podcast platform, interview them, use your time, create a podcast episode, publish it, put it out there and promote the episode. And they're only asking. They are just wanting to take. And there is no reciprocity. There is nothing that they're saying they're going to give apart from the person's time in doing the interview. And that's what I find very, very surprising, that none of these booking agents have really clicked onto this fact at all, because the easiest way to get a yes from somebody is to show them what you're going to put in, what you're going to contribute, and don't leave it up to them to go searching for it. So my advice is, number one, do your research. You want to get booked on a podcast. There is a few key things, and I'll run them through for you right now, what I would advise you do. And you don't need a booking agency. Yes, you could absolutely use one, but if you do, then I would 100% review what they're going to send out on your behalf and give them your brief in what you would like them to do for you, so that you're not making this huge mistake that all of these people are making right now. So do your research on the podcast. And yes, this could be something that a VA could do for you, or your podcast booking agency could do, is research and find relevant podcasts for you to appear on. And relevant would mean there's a match between your audience and the audience of the podcast, that you've got something to bring to that audience that is of interest to the people who are listening. So you want to find relevant podcasts for you to appear on as a guest. Then you're going to craft your pitch. And here's what you would include. Usually it would be really great to start off by talking about the podcast, what you think is an episode that you've really enjoyed, why you've enjoyed it. Show the podcast host what the relevance is for you and this podcast. Like, why have you selected this one? Why are you asking to be a guest on the podcast? Make it easy for them to see the connection. Make it easy for them to understand why you'd be relevant. So what is that connection? What have you got, and what are you going to bring to this episode that the audience is going to love? I would even go as far as to suggest the topic and even maybe write out the title of the suggested episode. So say, this is my main topic I'd love to bring to, and if you've done your research, you'd see that there aren't any recent episodes that are on exactly the same thing. You know, the podcast host loves to bring a bit of variety to their audience. Yes, we want it to be relevant, and we don't want identical episodes running one one after each other. So do your research, see what they've been talking about recently, bring something that's relevant but a little bit fresh to the table. Say, here's what I'd love to talk about. If you want to suggest a couple of different topics, you could do that, but suggest it. Don't give them a one sheet with a bit of background on you and what you like to talk about, and let the host do all of the work, because every single step that you're requiring them to take is another step that they're not saying yes to you coming on as a guest. Make it easy for them. You do the work. You decide what would be the best topic for you to present on this podcast and suggest it. You can, or of course, say that there would be other potential options. If the host didn't like that one, then you could talk about these other two topics. Limit it to 3. They don't need to have a stack of 10 different topics. So suggest your topic. Even write the title out for them. This would be what it could be called. Of course, they will do their own. If they want to change the title, they want to make it their own, they will. But what we're trying to do in your pitch is remove the thinking, remove the hard work, make them look at this and think, this sounds like an absolute no-brainer for me to do it. You want them to be thinking, yes, straight away. So don't hide that stuff in an attachment, in a one-pager that's generic, that's been created for everybody, because again, that's not showing that you've done any research, you've paid any attention to this particular podcast, and you're not putting a pitch together for them. So I would not recommend just having that in a one sheet. Put it in the email. The third part of your pitch is how you'd support it, which is what I've covered. So what are you going to do? If I do get selected as a guest for this podcast, I'm going to send out it out in my email, my weekly newsletter. I'm going to share it to my social media audience, who is however big that is. Show the value that you're offering to them. If you've got an audience of thousands on your Facebook, on your Instagram, wherever you might have built your audience, even on LinkedIn, say, I'm going to send it out to my audience of 2,000 people or 5,000 people or 10,000 people, whatever that audience is. Give the podcast host the data in the email. And this is really, you're marketing yourself to come on as a guest. So tell them why they should select you, why this should be amazing. I would include in the email that I send, something that's showing that you really love the podcast. What is it that you like about it? What's an episode that you've enjoyed and why? That can help to build trust and connection, because again, it doesn't feel like you've just been selected. There's a copy and paste email where you've just inserted the name of the podcast and it's all the same generic stuff. If you're putting in something that's completely unique to this podcast and the podcast host is reading it, it's about their podcast, you're going to create a lot more trust as somebody that they've never heard of before. So remember that. They don't know who you are. It doesn't matter what you have, the accolades, how often you've spoken on other platforms. But podcast hosts, it doesn't really matter. They're not thinking, well, that makes you a good guest to have. It's actually far more about, are you relevant? And are you somebody who's showing a great partner, your partnership? What would you call it? You're showing that you can be a great partner by actually being involved and connected in this. A bonus, and this is something I highly recommend you doing, because I guarantee most people are not doing it. Before you send the pitch, go onto that person's podcast on Apple Podcasts, leave them a rating and a review. Actually, leave a review, put your name in it, say what you liked about it so that it's genuine. What is that episode that you really enjoyed that you're going to show that you enjoyed in the pitch? Leave them a review. Can you imagine how much harder it is to say no to somebody who's shown an active interest in your podcast before they've asked for anything and left a review and a 5-star rating? That podcast host is grateful for every single review and every single rating. So the fact that you've done that is showing that you've put skin in the game before you've put out your hand asking for a guest spot. So that would be 100% get you a yes straight from that email if you're going to do that. Really show that you're invested in this activity just as much as you're wanting the podcast host to be invested in showcasing you on their show. So it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. You can do this yourself. You don't need an agency, but if you're using an agency, I would provide them with this feedback. I'd provide them with direction on how you want them to pitch you. Don't let them do a cut and paste email template with a one-pager that's generic and just be sending your name out, because that is quite damaging to your brand. It's damaging to you as a guest, and you're really not going to be getting a yes from any quality hosts. You're going to be getting a yes from podcast hosts who are maybe desperate to have someone come on their podcast, not someone who's picking and choosing the best content. Because, what I see in all of these pitches I've been getting, they want me to do all the work. They want me to analyze this person, see whether they'd be relevant, what the topic would be that they would talk on, choose the topic from their one page. They're asking me to do all of this work and to come on my platform and have free exposure, and I really feel like that's setting this relationship off on the wrong foot completely. So please don't do that. Please start off by giving the podcast a rating and a review before you send your pitch email. Please make your email, the pitch, personalized to that podcast host. Yes, there will be some content in there that you can repurpose, but do not do a copy and paste and just insert the podcast name. Add in special personalized content. As I've said, add in what you loved about their podcast, what episode you were really drawn to. Give them a suggested topic for their podcast that you're showing that you've done your research. You're showing you understand who the audience is. Say why you feel this would be a great topic for the audience. Show them that you get it, that you understand, because you're showing that you're going to be a great guest to have on the podcast because you are there, you're understanding the value you can bring to that host's audience. And that's really it. And if you do those things and you send off your podcast pitches and you're not getting a yes, I'd be very highly surprised, because you're going to stand out. You're going to be different to all of the other pitches that are coming in that are just generic. The copy paste, no effort put in at all. You're going to really stand out. And I'd be highly surprised if you're not getting a yes from the podcast host when you're taking this kind of approach. It doesn't take long at all. And you can definitely be using a VA to support you. Use a VA to help you research the podcast you'd like to appear on. Use a VA to help you design. If you'd like to have a one sheet, you can absolutely do that. It's not even necessary, because what you put in your email, you can link them to your website if you'd like, if you want to show them a bit about your business, and you can even link them to your favorite social media platform so they could have a quick look and go and find you from the email and see what your vibe is and everything about you. You do not need a one sheet. The one sheet can be handy, but to be honest, I make a decision before I've even opened the one sheet. I'm making it from the email. Make it easy for these people. We're time poor. We don't want to go and do all the research on a random guest who's just popped up in our inbox with no, there's no connection. There's no existing relationship there. We really are trying to make a quick decision. Is this something that's worth my time or not? So make it easy. Why not just put the information right there in the email, make it super simple? So you can do that. You can absolutely do this yourself and send off the emails. If you are going to use an agency, I would advise jotting down this information that I've provided you, this advice, and making sure that they're going to follow a lot of these points, because if not, then you're paying for them to be sending out generic emails that are not getting you a yes. So there's a lot of money that's going astray right now, because I tell you, I'm not saying yes to any of those generic pitches that come into me. And that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd love to come and guest on my podcast, well, I've just told you how to get a guest spot. So if you'd like to come and be a guest on She's the Business, follow the tips, follow my advice in this episode, send me your pitch, and we'll hook up a time for you to come and have a chat with me. Because if you are pitching to me, then obviously you've listened to this episode, so well done for you. You can tell me what you loved about it. You can tell me what it is that you think you could offer of value to my audience, and how you could make a really great episode together that my audience would love to listen to and would gain value from. That's all that's required. It's super simple. And yes, we do love to have guests on our podcast. We just want to have people who are in it to share and connect and collaborate in this experience. And when both parties are both putting the energy in, when we're both sharing the episode, when we're both promoting the podcast, then it benefits all. It benefits everybody. So yes, you want to come to this with the intention and the vision that you are putting in just as much effort as the podcast host, and that you're 100% behind doing this activity, because as I said at the beginning, it's content that will stick around for a long time. Let's make it good quality content. Let's make this a really good partnership that can benefit you both for years to come. That's it for today's episode. So if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love to see a rating and review. Let me know what you loved about it. Scroll down, hit the 5 stars, and send me a few words. And if you pop your name and your business name in there, then I will select you for a future shout out on an episode and give you even more exposure on another of my podcast episodes as a thank you for leaving me a review. So you can see the value is endless. There's so much opportunity that we can have using our podcasting platforms and using our connections and collaborations with others to help us both grow our businesses. And I'll talk to you next week. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Let's speak soon. Bye. Do you get your knickers in a knot every time it comes to pricing your services? Maybe you know that you're undercharging. You know that you could be charging more and you really feel like what you're offering has so much more value, but you're constrained by a competitive market, or you're just not sure that if you raise your rates, maybe you're scared that somebody won't buy and then you'll end up with no clients and oh my God, what will happen then? Pricing has to be one of the hardest things that any business owner has to do. And it's because it's completely subjective, right? You can set your price at almost anything. And that's why most of us find ourselves pricing based on what other people are doing. But that means you end up in a place where you're competing on price. You're pricing yourself in a market against other people. And who wins in that situation? Well, guess who? The client, 100% of the time. So that's not what we want to be doing. You want to be setting your prices confidently, not undercutting yourself, and actually being paid properly for your services. So how do we do that? Well, there is a way that you can learn how to do pricing, how to get your expertise and knowledge priced in services that also mean you're not constantly marketing and selling. You want to be spending more of your time earning the money as opposed to trying really hard to bring it in and sell something to somebody who's not really that keen to buy it. Pricing is a really important part of your marketing strategy and it helps you to get the right clients. So yes, this is something that we definitely need to do and need to get it right. When we've got it right, wow, it feels so easy. Imagine being able to confidently tell people your price. Imagine having them just say yes straight away, no negotiation, no brainer, and it's actually what you want to be being paid. How much easier would your business feel then? Right? So the good news is that I'm running a live workshop as part of my Pricing with Poise online course. This is a mini course. We'll call it a mini course because really it's not a huge big course. Like as opposed to my main program, Business Jam, that is a big strategic program. Pricing with Poise Masterclass is something that you can do in the space of a weekend. You can really knuckle down, get it done, and get your pricing done. And for everybody who's enrolled in Pricing with Poise, this month I'm running a live workshop. So you're going to be able to join me online and bring all of your questions, bring the things that you're struggling with your pricing. How do you put this package together? How should you set your pricing? Maybe how do you price your different services so that you're getting people to buy the one that you really want them to buy instead of just choosing the cheapest one or something that's based on price. We will cover all of that and more so that you leave it clear and confident about your pricing and profitable as well, because that's what we're here for. This is what business is all about. It's about you being profitable so that you can put that money back into whatever it is that you would love to invest in, donate to, or support with your life and your lifestyle. Head to jessicaosborne.com/pricing to find out all the information about Pricing with Poise. You can dive right in today, get a head start on the online content, go through the pricing strategy, worksheets that I've got for you, go through the short videos explaining how it works, start that work, and then join me for the live workshop on the 19th of July. It's going to be loads of fun. You'll be able to get live coaching, you'll be able to get your questions answered, and yes, there will be a replay and recording that will be available to you inside your program, Pricing with Poise, that you also have lifetime access to. So what's not to like about that? Head over to jessicaosborne.com/pricing right now, get yourself enrolled, and I'll see you online by the end of the month. Oh, and one more thing. I've just decided, because it's the start of a new financial year here in Australia, that I will go 50-50 with you on this workshop. So if you put in the code 50 into the checkout for Pricing with Poise, then you'll get 50% off the already reduced rate. So this is a very limited time. It's only happening until this live workshop. You can get the 50% off just for the next week, and then it's over. Then you can join Pricing with Poise at the normal price of $397 after that. But just for the next week, you'll be getting it for $97. That is 75% off. That's ridiculous. Crazy. Let's do this. I can't wait to see you there, and we'll do it. Okay.